Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via Livestream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbprou.com.
Good evening. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO, and excited to be here once again with you, talking small business. Each week, we come together and really share valuable information, best practices, useful knowledge that you as a small business owner can benefit from. We try and make it into bite-sized pieces and really give you something that you can take away from this episode and apply directly to your business. So very excited to have you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome. As always, feel free to post comments or post questions in the chat, and we'll be glad to entertain them and get your responses. So this evening, our featured guest speaker is Jack Killion. And, Jack is a man of many talents. He's done a lot of things over a long career. He's been involved in so many businesses. I can't even tell you all of them. So very happy to have him here this evening. Actually met Jack through networking. He was one of the leaders of the program in New Jersey that they started up for networking between MIT Sloan School alumni. And I came out, got a chance to meet him, connect with others, and develop a relationship. And now I've known Jack for many years, doing some great things. And one of the things that has been valuable to him, and really I always say, in business, the most important thing is your relationships. And you can't build relationships without networking. So definitely learning valuable things about how to network more effectively. We're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about other valuable things that can be helpful in your business. So what I'd like to do is welcome Jack and get started. Hey, Jack, how are you doing this evening?
Good, Andrew. Thank you very much. And I'd like to say good evening to all your guests on your show. This is a great thing that you're doing.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got a lot of things that you're always doing, but you have a passion for entrepreneurship and helping people, and which is great. So definitely this evening we're going to cover a lot of things, and as I mentioned, the topic is network all the time, everywhere, with everybody. So we're going to get into that as well as many other topics. So, Jack, before we get started, you've done so many things that, I can't even remember them all. And you might not be able to either. But if you could take a few minutes, talk a little bit about your path, where you came from, what you've gone through, and where you are now, that would be really great.
Okay, that's great. My life really breaks into two parts. The first part, up until the age of about 30, is a pretty conventional background. I grew up in a real blue-collar family. I was the first one to be lucky enough to go to college. I went to a couple of great colleges. And then I was recruited out of graduate school to go to work in England for a British tech company as my first job. And I spent about 3.5 years living and working in England for this British company. When I got drafted, I had to come back to the States to go into the Army. I spent a couple of years in the Army, and then I was lucky enough to be recruited by McKinsey and Company, where I spent about 4 years strategically working with leaders of Fortune 500 type of organizations like American Express, Columbia Records, CBS, Port of Philadelphia, City of New York, and a bunch of others. And I realized at one point when McKinsey started talking to me about maybe becoming a partner, that wasn't really the path I wanted to go down the rest of my life. So I resigned from McKinsey and I stepped off the ledge to start on my entrepreneurial career, which has now spanned the past 45 plus years. And that's where my background becomes more in line with those of the people that are listening to this program tonight. When I left McKinsey, my vision was to start a company to raise venture capital for other entrepreneurs. And when I left McKinsey, all I really had was a vision. I didn't have any entrepreneur clients. I didn't have any money of my own to invest in deals. I didn't have any contacts with significant investors. I didn't have anybody helping me. I didn't have any office space. And this was way back before the internet and email and web and all that stuff. So I really started cold turkey. And from that point on, in the next 45 plus years, I've successfully started and grown 10 different new companies, totally, in most cases, totally unrelated. And if we had more than an hour, I could weave you through the logic of how I started them. But the first one was the venture capital consulting one. That morphed into me and two partners starting the first national country music magazine in America. And that publication ran for 30 years. I exited after about 5 years. I took over a failing family-owned manufacturing company building plastic extruding equipment. And the day that my dad passed away and I had to take over that company, the company had $23 in the bank and owed over $2 million, most of it personally guaranteed, and no successor. So at the time he passed away, I was running two magazines in New York. I couldn't leave them, but I had to jump into his company, which I eventually wound up running for 10 years and selling it to a public British company after growing it significantly. And early on in that period, when I was already running 3 different businesses, my wife and I went into the business of breeding and developing and training racehorses. And we spent 20 years, we bought a farm, and the way we financed that is a story for another day, but we bought a 50-acre farm in New Jersey and went into the business. I had never really worked with horses before, but I had a passion for the industry. And we successfully spent 20 years breeding and training racehorses. And I personally, I'm a very hands-on leader. So I personally have delivered about 100 baby horses. So beyond that, I started another magazine in the wireless and mobile communication space. That led me to partnering with a person from Wall Street. We started a technology-specific hedge fund that I stayed with for 3 years. We started from scratch. That morphed into me leaving and teaming up with another partner, and we started a fund of hedge funds that we ran successfully for 18 years. And in that 18-year period, no investor ever lost money with me. And it sort of brings me up to the current period of time. In the last 18 months, I started my 10th new venture, which is called Street Smart Entrepreneurs, which gives me a platform for leveraging all the things I've learned in both starting my own ventures and evaluating thousands of other deals in advising hundreds of other entrepreneurs, leveraging all that experience into being able to hopefully help other entrepreneurs globally start and successfully develop their profitable businesses. So I think, I've got a deep background in entrepreneurship. I've done most everything. I raised money for deals, both my own and client engagements. I've bought companies, sold companies, turned around companies. So I think I've got a lot to bring to the table, and I'm excited to be here talking to you all tonight and sharing whatever kind of specific information might be helpful to you.
Okay, that's great, Jack. 100 baby horses. I'd have never guessed that. Definitely.
The first couple deliveries were scary experiences.
Okay, I could imagine. I definitely could never see myself doing that. But as business owners, there's a lot of things as a business owner I've done that I could have never seen myself doing before.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to, you have to do it because it needs to be done. So
Right.
That's excellent. So definitely, we're going to cover a lot of stuff. We got a comment from John. Just want to make sure we hear about your entrepreneurship part of your career. So we're going to cover networking, but definitely we're going to be talking about leadership. So that's going to span a lot of the businesses. So thanks for your comment, John, and definitely we'll weave that in. And if we get somewhere and you have a question, feel free to type it in, and we'll try to address it. So that was a great intro, Jack, and you've done so many things successfully, and you've been able to you've started from scratch, you've come into businesses, you've sold businesses, you've bought businesses, you worked for large companies, you were in the military, so a lot of cool stuff. Several of those things I've done, but you've done a lot more than I have, but you've been around a little longer than me, so I hope to catch up, or at least try to. So you definitely in that area.
You're doing great. This
Okay.
is important what you're doing.
Okay, thanks. No, I appreciate it, and yeah, it's great to be able to do this together. So what I want to do is we want to start out, on topic, talking a little bit about networking. Actually, Jack's new book, the same title as tonight's episode, is Network All the Time, Everywhere, with Everybody. So, there's a copy of the book, and, we're going to get some of the secrets gleaned from the book. But before we get started, tonight's and all night's episodes of Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, are really outgrowths or sponsored and put together through the Small Business Pro University. So it's important to know what the Small Business Pro University is. So we're going to just give a quick video, and then we'll come back and talk to Jack about networking with everyone all the time. Do you own your business, or does it own you? Is your business growing, and are you making enough money? As a business owner, there are so many things you need to know to become more successful. Hello, my name is Andrew Frazier, the Business Growth Pro and CFO. I created the Small Business Pro University for you. Small Business Pro University has self-paced, dynamic, multimedia learning experiences created by more than 20 instructors who are business owners just like you. Small Business Pro University will empower you to become a masterpreneur by learning the secrets to creating a successful enterprise, to go from working in your business to working on your business. Take advantage of our strategic coaching program, or just simply choose the courses that you need at www.sbprou.com. We will empower you to thrive and not just survive, and make more money in any business environment. Great. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. I'm here with Jack Killion. We're going to talk a little bit about networking and get some secrets out of his book about networking. So first, Jack, why did you choose the topic networking, and what do you feel is the purpose of your book and what you're trying to help people understand?
Well, I think that if there's any one skill that everybody should learn, it's the skill of networking and developing relationships with people. I think it's a skill that ranks right up there with reading, writing, and arithmetic. So I think it should be taught in all of our school systems, at the high school level, at the college level, and it's not. So people spend many hundreds of thousands of dollars getting their degrees. They exit the university, and they've been told you should network, and maybe they've had some invitations to networking alumni events at the college, but they don't really know how to do that. And when I quit my job with McKinsey to start my first venture, I was totally clueless about networking. 45 years ago or so, nobody really talked about networking. There were no networking clubs. There were no books on the topic. It was a concept I had never even thought about until I quit my job and I'm out there on my own. I sawed the limb off. I had no other income. I didn't have any clients. And I realized I had to start calling people cold, which I hate. And I assume all your listeners hate to make cold calls. But it struck me that unless I made the call, nobody was going to call me. So my learning about networking started with my very first venture. And I've been getting better almost every day for the past 45 plus years. And if I had a choice starting a business, if somebody would give me a check for $500,000 or $1 million, or I could start the business by having really exceptional networking skills, I would reject the money and depend on really leveraging my networking skills to drive the success of any venture I've had. And, every one of my ventures has been different. So in every one, I'm working in a new community. I'm working in the country music industry, or the thoroughbred racehorse industry, or the plastic equipment industry, or the hedge fund industry. And every one of those required me to start from scratch and build my network in that community. So I just, very honestly, have been getting to be very good at it. And I encourage everybody to really work on their skills. And, you can get better at it every day. This is not like putting a man on the moon or blasting a spaceship up into space. Everybody can network effectively. Forget your hangups about being shy or introverted, or you don't know what to say. It all comes down to practicing, like most things that you develop a skill in, whether you're a baseball player or basketball player or an actor. Practice pays off. So, that's why I named the title of my book, Network All the Time, Everywhere, with Everybody. And I think that's a key point that I want to drive home with your audience tonight. And just one of the mistakes I see people make is they tend to live in silos. They tend to separate their personal life and their professional life. And I think that's a mistake, because you can meet great people in any kind of circumstance. You can meet somebody at a funeral or a wedding or a family celebration that could be certainly important to you professionally. And you can meet somebody professionally that could be important to you and your family personally. So, I encourage you to start working on this much more than you have in the past.
Okay. That's a great point you made. That trying to separate your personal and your business, especially as a small business owner, you really are your business. So, if you try to separate it, your business, you're your brand and your business's brand, and it's based on you both professionally and personally. So, like you said, there's opportunities to build connections in, different areas. You really touched on a whole bunch of valuable stuff. So I want to just take a second to go over a few things. And dig into them a little bit further. So one of the key things that you said was that, networking is one of the most valuable things you can do. And everybody needs to learn about it and continually get better. And, actually someone not too long ago was talking about, if you're going to be a professional, the best investment you can make in your career is learning how to communicate better, which that's what drives networking. And I'm sure you're familiar with Dale Carnegie.
For sure.
And he's probably one of the best networkers ever lived. And generally when I'm working with someone, I have them read his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because that's really what networking is about. But there's different ways to communicate more effectively to build relationships. And that's really what networking is about. What would you say is, one of your key strategies for building a relationship and networking with someone that you've met for the first time?
I think one of the keys to success in networking is don't try to keep score. Don't worry about what you get out of it. We all hope to live a long life, and networking is a long time process. So when I meet somebody or when I'm coaching people on networking, I really encourage them to focus 90% of the discussion on the other person. And I think networking is a lot like rock climbing. And when you're talking to people, asking good questions in a friendly, open, nice way, what you're really trying to do is to find the finger holes where you have something in common with that person, where you can identify ways that you can begin to have a positive impact and add value to the other person. And this is a long marathon that we're involved in starting and growing our company. So you want to be positioned as somebody who is not selfish, who doesn't worry about keeping track of who does what for whom, but you just want to find ways to add value to other people. And that really bears fruit. And I have a couple rules. One is my Jack 1 year rule. And to me, anything significant that's going to happen good generally takes a year. So when I was planning to breed and have a baby horse, from the time I decided who to breed the female to, and I eventually delivered the baby, that's about a year. And if I'm starting a new company, it'll take me a year to really begin to build traction with that company. So when you're meeting new people for the first time, you can't expect immediately good things to happen. It's going to take a while. And so patience is one of the requirements for success in networking. And, the kinds of, when I talked about not separating your personal and family life, when I coach people about networking, I make the point that if you're not networking, that's your problem. You're only hurting yourself and maybe shortchanging your organization. But if you're not really effectively networking, you're really hurting your family and the people you care about, because you could be in a position that really changed their lives through the relationships you developed. And that's certainly been true in my case. For example, I networked with the head of women's health at Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, and she wound up saving my wife's life. When our son was 12 years old and a very good Little League baseball player, I reached out to the pitching coach of the New York Yankees as a birthday present for Jonathan and asked if he would be willing to meet with Jonathan and share lessons about pitching. And he got back to me almost immediately and said, for sure. So you got to think about the benefits of networking in a broad, long-term way.
Excellent. No, you've shared a whole bunch of nuggets. And, I was going to say what others said, that the rock climbing analogy is great. I might have to borrow it every so often if that's okay.
That'd be
But I'll give you credit. And but it makes a whole bunch of sense. Figuring out how to connect with people. One thing you talked about is everything takes at least a year. And
right.
I talk to people who want to start a business. Usually they have unrealistic expectations. And I always look at it as when you're in small business, everything tends to take twice as long and cost twice as much. So, you have to pray for patience because that's difficult for most people, if not everyone. So definitely that. You talked about how everybody needs to be able to network effectively, regardless, because if you don't, you're only hurting yourself and your family. And very true, because you're missing out on opportunities. Now, anybody can do it. Like you said, I mean, I'm an introvert. Actually, if you knew me in high school, some people thought I really didn't even talk that much. But over the years, I've developed skills to do that. One of the things I did also is looked at etiquette. Emily Post's book, great read and knowledge about really how to communicate and work with people. But from there, I've become a really good networker, and I just celebrated 10,000 connections on LinkedIn. So
that's great.
That's huge. So
that's pretty good.
Thank you. So now, once you've met somebody, what's next? What's most important to do after that?
Well, the other Jack rule that I refer to is my 24-hour rule, which means I think it's important when you meet somebody, either for the first time or the 100th time, that you follow up with that person within 24 hours. I think that's only polite. It only demonstrates that you really treat the relationship as an important one. And if you follow up quickly, as opposed to waiting 2 or 3 weeks because you don't want to feel pushy, if you follow up quickly, your message doesn't have to be very long because it's still in the other person's mind. So I think you need to follow up quickly, and you need to follow up on the things that you agreed to do. And as I said, always be looking for ways to add value to the other people. And I've coached a lot of high school kids and college kids, and they don't feel comfortable thinking that they could add value to a guy like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or some big time successful worldwide executive. And I said, don't be silly. Do you know any good Italian restaurant to recommend, or any good steak house to recommend, or any good golf course to play, or any good bottle of wine that your family enjoys, or any good book to read? So there's always a way to add value to people. And that's one of the purposes of this rock climbing analogy, so you can find out where you can add value. And people appreciate if you go out of your way to try to be helpful. And in a business sense, you could be referring possible clients or suppliers or professional advisors or maybe new employees. So there's lots of ways to add value to other people. And if you get positioned in people's minds that that's who you are, that's how you begin to build trust-based relationships that can really leverage your own efforts. And one of the keys to success for any entrepreneur is you can't possibly be a major success trying to do it on your own. So in every business I've started, I've tried to create strategic alliances outside the company with resources that can really be helpful. For example, on Street Smart Entrepreneurs, I've got an advisory team of 6 people that I bounce ideas off of all the time. I'm the only full-time employee with Street Smart, but I've got 2 college interns and 6 advisors and a bunch of other strategic relationships that really leverage my own efforts. So I would like everybody who's listening to this to be thinking about how do you leverage your own efforts. You only have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's a finite amount of capacity you have. How do you leverage your limited resources to really accelerate the growth of your business? And I think it's through relationships that you create by networking.
Okay, no, that definitely. I like your 24-hour rule. I actually follow it without realizing it. So, because generally every time I meet with someone, I try and follow up within 24 hours, and usually it's via LinkedIn, because that's a good way to continue to build the relationship forward. And follow up is as or more important than your actual meeting, because that's how you start to build a relationship. I know one of the key sales things when I talk to business owners, sales 101 is, nobody buys from you the first time you meet them and talk to them. Usually it's 7 to 12 touches. So they have to experience you 7 to 12 times. So just meet them once isn't enough. So you have to continue to communicate and build relationships before people are going to be able to do business with you. So, definitely, a lot of great things about alliances, working with people. This is going great. A lot of valuable stuff for business owners, a lot of great comments, questions. So we do have a question that I wanted to get back to you. And really it's about, what was the biggest challenge you faced launching your VC business. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. And, some of you may know I wrote my first book a few years ago, Running Your Small Business Like a Pro. And then just recently I completed the companion workbook. So not only can you read about things you need to do as a business owner, it gives you a chance to practice them and work on them for your business within the workbook. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit of, show a quick video so you can see a little bit about what the original book is and how the workbook complements it. So let's take a look. My first book is Running Your Small Business Like a Pro. And really, that took me 5 years to write. It was, your first book, as you know, is the hardest one.
Right, exactly. Let me take a...
But it really took the work of working with 500 plus business owners.
So 500, wow, that's great.
Looked at the patterns that I've seen and really broke down the things that they needed to know in terms of, how did they get where they are now? What's their most important job as a business owner? What is their greatest fear? And then, is it your employees, or are you crazy? Because, definitely managing people is a challenge for small businesses, and just, important things about financing and retirement, all those things that you need to know as a business owner, but where would you have learned them? Who's teaching you that? So many business owners don't know those things. First book, people really liked and found it valuable, but to get more out of it, I put together a workbook.
Okay,
so,
nice, okay.
One of the things we talk about is your greatest fear as a business owner,
right.
which is numbers and analysis. So in the book, we talk about, your financials, your financial statements, what you should look for, but just reading about it versus doing exercises on it, that really helps you to understand it better. We also have the 60-second commercial format.
Right.
And in here,
real good exercises, yeah.
you can create your own. So it allows you to really take what you read about and actually employ it for you and for your business.
Excellent.
Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm Andrew Frazier, your host, and I'm here with Jack Killion. And we're talking about networking all the time with everybody. But Jack has so many skills and so much experience that we're going to overflow into other topics. And we had a great question from someone in our audience and wanted to give Jack a chance to answer about what's the biggest challenge you faced launching your VC business.
That was my first startup, so I was really starting cold turkey. And as I mentioned, I had no entrepreneur clients looking for help raising money, and I had no sources of possible investment to go into deals if I ever found a good deal. So I was starting with a clean sheet of paper. And one of the lessons I learned early about networking is, random networking is great. Meeting people at events or at groups or sitting on a plane or on a train. That's random networking, and it's great for practicing your conversational skills, getting rid of your own inhibitions about talking to strangers. But the real payoff from networking comes when you target somebody that can help you accomplish a major goal. So I was a week or so into my new venture, and I had to start someplace. So I decided to start calling big-time investors to explain what I was going to be trying to do. I wasn't trying to sell them a deal, but I want to explain what my process was going to be, why I left McKinsey to do this. So I start reaching out cold to big league investors and also to people that would be working with entrepreneurs, accounting firms, law firms, bankers. And the very first big time person I ever reached out to cold was a guy in New York who was running the investment portfolio in America for the Rothschild family, one of the wealthiest families in the world. And I was petrified to cold call him, but I did, and I got through, and I'm sure I stumbled in my opening comments, but I managed to convince him to meet with me. And I went down to Wall Street a couple of days later, and I spent about an hour in his office describing what I was trying to do, but mostly asking him about what kind of investment opportunities is the Rothschild Group looking for. Startups, turnaround, technology deals, U.S. only deals, East Coast only deals, international deals, real estate deals. So most of the time was spent me asking him, learning about his investment objectives. And that meeting went great. And then a few days later, he started introducing me to other possible investors that he thought would be interested in hearing my story. So I started to grow my network of investors. And then the investors, a key benefit that happened that I had not expected, these investors that I was beginning to build a trust-based relationship with, they were rejecting many more deals than they were saying yes to. So rather than telling an entrepreneur, no, we're not going to help you, they would say, why don't you call my new friend, Jack Killion? He might be able to help you. So unexpectedly, my contacts with investors started to generate a steady flow of deals for me to evaluate. And one of the things I learned over the 5-year period that I was doing that, and it's true today because I'm still seeing deals all the time, is there are very few deals that really justify somebody else trying to raise money for them. Either their business model is flawed, their product idea is no good, they don't have the right team, or maybe the timing is wrong. So one of the real challenges that we ran into with that firm raising venture capital for new deals was it was very hard to find deals worth getting behind and helping to try to raise money. So at the end of 5 years, I had 2 partners at that time. I said to them, this is a lot of fun. It's interesting. We're meeting a lot of interesting people, but we have a flawed business model. We're never going to be able to earn a living because we just don't see enough high quality deals to get involved in. So if we're so smart, we should come up with our own deal to start, go out and raise money for it and see if we can start and grow a business. So that's how we zeroed in on starting America's first country music magazine, because one of the deals that we did look at in the venture capital era was helping launch Rolling Stone magazine. We recognized the high potential of Jan Winter's ideas. So we spent about a year advising Rolling Stone magazine, and that got us interested in publishing. And that triggered us to go out and raise $500,000 to start Country Music Magazine. So the challenge in the first case was finding enough investors, and more importantly, finding an adequate number of deals to get involved in working on.
No, that's great. Definitely great response. Like always, you covered quite a few valuable things. So I just want to rewind it a little bit so that we can just emphasize a few things that you mentioned. And, one, you talked about really targeted marketing versus random networking. And it's important to, talk to the right people and be specific about it. There's certain networking events that make the most sense for you. You don't just go to every single thing that's happening. And, not only that, one of the things I always tell people is don't say no to yourself, because a lot of people are like, I don't think I will do that, or I don't think they're going to want that, but make them say no to you. Because surprisingly, many times you're just one ask away from what you want. And so, never say no to yourself. Get comfortable getting no's. That's part of what entrepreneurship and business is all about. But when you get the yes, that makes a huge difference. One other thing is, early on in your business never ever turns out to be what you originally intended. So you generally have to pivot many times. And even after you're in business doing okay, your business evolves. Like mine's gone from primarily teaching to primarily coaching to primarily consulting to primarily training over several years. But you got to go where the market is and where you have a business model that works. So, definitely appreciate you sharing that. Definitely that, involves really just adapting and adjusting. And thanks for your comment. And, really, some of those things are key. So one thing that'd be great if you could share is the things that cause small businesses to fail. I think that could be valuable to us, because sometimes, it's good to hear what you should do, but it's equally and sometimes more valuable to hear what you shouldn't do. So tell us a little bit about that and your perspective.
I think there's quite a few reasons that newer ventures fail. Even older, more established ventures fail for the same reason. Poor leadership is one. Having the wrong team trying to execute the idea is another one. Having a product or service, and I see this often, having a product or service that nobody really cares about. I see it's like pushing a rock up a hill. And I've seen lots of companies struggle for years with a product that nobody is really prepared to pay for. It's just not important enough. And this week, I posted on LinkedIn. I've been posting once a week various lessons for entrepreneurs. And the lesson I posted this week, and it was the first video I did, was talking about having a flawed business model is often the root cause of a company not making it. And I've seen that over and over again. And I've certainly been guilty of starting companies not realizing that the opening business model that we started with was flawed. When we started Country Music Magazine, we were relying primarily on selling advertising to the record companies as our revenue source. We were a couple months into the project, and we had raised $500,000 based on the business plan where the fundamental business model was selling ads to the record companies. After a couple of months, I realized that that business model was not going to work, and we had to change the basic business model. When I took over the failing family-owned manufacturing company, that company had been positioning itself as a manufacturer of custom small extruding equipment, which was a very tough way to distinguish the company in the marketplace. And I was there a couple months, and I thought the business model should really be transitioned to we're a polymer processing solution provider, which would enable us to do a much broader range of products and services for the target market. So we started doing revenue producing conferences. We started doing revenue producing training programs. We created a separate company that provided lab rental services to the Fortune 500 companies. So I think anybody in this audience who's been struggling with their business for a while, in addition to looking at whether you have the right team and adequate funding and a good product, look at your basic business model. And is that really sound and effective? And I think a lot of your viewers, listeners, are going to conclude that they got to tweak their business model. And I've certainly done that for my own deals and for client deals.
Okay, no, that's great. Definitely, looking at your business model, I talk to business owners all the time about that. I probably talked to 3 different business owners today about that in different coaching sessions. One of the challenges is a lot of people don't even know what their business model is or what a business model is. I find, I'm not sure if that's something you find as well.
Oh, for sure. A lot of entrepreneurs think if they have a product or a service, that can convert into a business. I've seen lots of entrepreneurs trying to raise money who basically have a product, and a product does not make a company. You got to have a lot more to offer than just a product. Like I've seen entrepreneurs try to start a company in the golf industry because they've got a new design for a putter. Well, that idea could be ripped off almost immediately. And I don't understand how you build a company around a single putter design. I think if I had a unique putter that I want to try to monetize, I'd be thinking about how to sell it on TV for as long as possible with one of these 800 telephone offers. But that's not a business. That's a one-shot try to capitalize on a product idea.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, really looking at your business model, digging into your projected P&L cash flow statement and developing your assumptions and figuring and, modeling what would happen, what you think is going to happen based on your assumptions. And then, based on your assumptions, if that happens, are you going to make money? And a lot of times the answer is no. And, right. More often than not, just because, different people have different experience in business and starting a business. And especially if it's your first business, there's so many things you need to know. I don't know who said it, but they said usually you're most successful on your third business. So, hurry up and fail the first 2 times so that you could be real successful. And, one other thing that you talked about that, is key is you talked about how you determined your business model was flawed, but then you figured out how to make a viable business out of it. And, one thing a lot of people don't understand and underappreciate is you're more likely to be successful if you invest in the right person as opposed to the right business, because a lot of times they can figure out how to make it work as opposed to the wrong person with the right business because they're not going to be able to implement it.
Totally agree with that.
So, yeah. So, definitely great lessons, important things to bring out to this audience. So thank you for doing that. So, as I mentioned, even though it's an hour goes really fast. So we're coming up on the hour. But, before we close things out, one thing that, want you to think about is, what are the key things that you want people to take away from what we talked about tonight, that they can take tomorrow and start implementing to improve their situation. So think about that. I got one other video about the Power Breakfast event that I do. And actually, we're bringing the Power Breakfast back. So this October, we're going to have our first Power Breakfast in 2 years, and it's going to be super powerful. So looking forward to really being able to do that. But for those of you who have never been to the Power Breakfast, it's not your average networking, and it's hard to appreciate it without being there. But this video will give you a quick feel for what it's like to attend. My name is Andrew Frazier from A&J Management. One of the things we're here to do is supercharge your day. What we do as part of our business, as an outgrowth of our business, is we have a series of brain trust initiatives that we're continuing to build on. And really through the brain trust initiatives, what we're doing is we're bringing a higher level of intellectual capital to bear. So we're bringing in resources, experts, expertise from across the country to share best practices and connect with business owners, entrepreneurs, organizational leaders to help you be more effective in what you do.
What I'm learning from Power Breakfast that sets it apart from other networking opportunities is how my local activities integrate and are part of the larger business community.
It brings together people of all industries who can share all different levels of expertise and can educate each other on different changing nature and evolving regulatory legal landscape, as well as all facets of all industries that they might not otherwise be privy to.
The Power Breakfast is so important for the entrepreneurial community because it gives the various business people who come together an opportunity to interact, discover what it is they can do to help each other and also do some business.
From a corporate perspective, Marcia McLennan, and or for that matter, Andrew and his business model, his branding, none of us can succeed individually. We need partnership. Collaboration is the new norm.
Since 2011, the Power Breakfast has been held in the northern New Jersey area, but over the next couple of years, we expect to expand into Pennsylvania and New York as well.
Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05 here with Killion, talking about networking, but also talking about business and how to be successful as a business owner, things that you need to do, strategies that you need to follow, and things you don't need. So, as I mentioned, the hour goes really fast, but Jack, if you could take a few minutes and just try to summarize and share a few things that stick out that our listeners need to know, and that would be helpful for them to understand and be able to put to work within their business.
I think what I'd like your listeners to do is to think about 2 or 3 really important goals that they have, personal goals or professional goals, ones that will really make a difference in their personal life and or in their business life. Identify the goal, and then under that goal, list 5 people, 3 to 5 people, and I don't care who it is, that you think would be absolutely the best person to contact to help you accomplish that goal. So this is really targeted networking, goal oriented. And when you make that call to that person, you got to have a win-win proposal. It can't be just you calling to get a yes on something you're trying to accomplish. It's got to be a call where there's real benefit for the person that you're reaching out to. And if we had more time, I could give you lots of examples. But I've called successfully and networked my way to people with one shot to raise $500,000 to start Country Music Magazine. I called the Secretary of Agriculture in Washington, and with that call, I was able to find out how to raise money to buy a 50-acre farm in New Jersey because I had no money of my own when I was trying to buy the farm. I wanted to get an endorsement from President Nixon for Country Music Magazine. So I reached out cold to a state senator in Tennessee and asked him if he could get a copy of our first issue, which had a cover story of Johnny Cash appearing at the White House, if he could get that first issue and a letter from me to President Nixon. And he agreed to do that. I had a letter back from President Nixon within a week thanking me for the magazine, thanking me for the complimentary subscription. And that letter became instrumental in us being able to sell advertising. If the magazine was good enough for the President of the United States, it was certainly good enough for most of our targeted advertisers. So identify your goal, identify who can help you accomplish that goal, figure out what the win-win proposal is. When I called the Secretary of Agriculture, the win-win was I was trying to buy a farm and prevent it from becoming another housing development. And certainly the Department of Agriculture would prefer to keep a 50-acre farm in farmland as opposed to becoming a housing development. So we had overlapping interest in working together. So identify a goal, identify who you can help accomplish that, figure out what the win-win is, and the need that you have has to have two characteristics. It has to be important to you, really important, and it has to be urgent so that you can't put off making the call. And if you have an urgent, important need, you will suck up the nerve to call whoever it is, any place in the world that can help you accomplish that goal. So I think that's a key takeaway from this whole discussion.
Man, that was a lot. I'm still trying to take all that in, but definitely, I'm sure the audience is too. Fortunately, the recordings are available on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, where you're seeing it tonight. So definitely, it's worth taking a second look. But one of the things that you mentioned, because there were so many, is you really have to think big and have big goals. And like I said before, don't say no to yourself. Go after them because surprisingly things can happen, but you have to be confident, and it has to be urgent and important to you for you to be confident and committed to doing it. So, Jack, this has been a great evening. We've shared some tremendous stuff. I wish we had another hour, but it's already late. But definitely going to invite you back again. Hopefully, we can get you on. And plus, if you really like this, you can learn a whole lot more from Jack's book. Jack, you want to hold it up again and check it out? It's available on Amazon and other places. So network all the time, everywhere, with everybody by Jack. Right. So excellent.
Thank you, Andrew. This has been great. I hope our listeners have really learned some things, and I'd love to hear back from them.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I mean, we've gotten comments throughout, powerful, awesome. Thanks for the nuggets. So, I could do another hour now. So obviously it resonates with people who tuned in because, what you're talking about is extremely valuable. So
no, it's critical stuff.
Okay, great. So give me a minute while I close everything out. But thank you again. Thanks to everybody for joining us and listening in, and really providing some great comments, some great questions, which makes the show even more valuable for everybody. So thank you for doing that. As you know, each week we have tremendous guests who share valuable information on all types of areas and topics that are important for small business owners. So next week, our special guest is City Medina, and he's going to be talking about a space of your own. And what that really means is entrepreneurs and business owners, they need to have a place where they can be effective. And one thing that he's done in his company, he created Equal Space, which is a co-working business, a co-working center in Newark, specifically focused on creatives. And I've had some events there. He does some great things for entrepreneurs and building a community down there. So next week we've got Leadership Live at 8:05. We're going to have City Medina, and we're going to be talking about a space of your own. So definitely looking forward to having you on board for that. And thanks again for joining in. And as always, the more you know, the faster you grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.